Yes, because you'll see say a right-wing protest, and there will be police everywhere. You see a Muslim protest, and there's very, very few police.
To John in Heathrow. John, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Now, are you literally at Heathrow Airport, or do you live in Heathrow?
No, I live near Heathrow.
Right, over to you.
Israel. I don't think all these countries, all these people, why are they all telling a country that's been attacked to ceasefire?
Well, in fairness, I'm not sure many countries are on the West. It's actually become it's the demand of protesters, and it's the demand of politicians like Sadiq Khan that are doing it. So
yeah, I'm sorry, but I think Israel should get the job done as soon as possible. As simple as that.
And is that because basically, as long as there's Hamas, there'll never be peace?
No.
I mean, in a word, John, I think lots of people would agree with you.
It's Israel and Hamas at the moment. You'll get something else in another country soon come up, you know.
I mean, when you look at it through the lens of Ukraine, which we hardly ever talk about, except I try to remind people...
Well, not now. It's moved now to Gaza.
Exactly. And that's a danger, by the way. You know, I remember when people were talking about we should have a ceasefire at that point, when Russia were getting ground down in the mud, they weren't making their advances. And actually, people were quite happy to say then, we shouldn't have a ceasefire. That only helps Russia regroup.
Yeah.
And yet there's a lot of people, maybe some of those same people, now calling for a ceasefire for Hamas. Interesting.
Yeah.
John, thank you. Good call. Let's go to Richie in West Midlands. Hello, Richie.
Hi, Nick.
Hello.
I'm actually really disappointed with the imbalanced reporting that's going on. Everything is very one-sided, very skewed towards Israel. And what you should be doing is actually educating the British public about historical events that have led up to all of this. This did not start on the 7th of October. This has been ongoing for a lot of years. Obviously, a lot of people that listen to the news tend to make their call based on an isolated incident that happened on the 7th. I, like everyone else, was horrified with what happened on the 7th. The problem is when you actually look into the history, this started long before then, and I'm actually embarrassed listening to all of the reporting that's going on. You're not sending out a balanced viewpoint.
Well, that's interesting. I don't want to stop you because you might say I'm trying to do exactly that now. I think what we've done on this programme today is given voice to different opinions, yours being one of them. And yes, I question, and yes, I challenge. But what you're getting here on Talk TV is opinion. I've never pretended to try and do an analysis of the situation, because I don't think that's what this show is about. I'm asking questions and people are giving their opinions. I'm not sure it's our responsibility to start editing those. I mean, if more people want to ring in who would like to talk about the context and talk about the history, that's fine, but I will always ask those questions. But I'm just reflecting the calls.
Nick, it's not about editing anything. Nobody wants anything edited. But what people need is they need to be able to make a proper informed decision. Now, what's happening on the streets is people are better informed. That's why you've got such large protests going on. There have been all sorts of injustices in the past, but I think social media has actually helped inform the British public and public across the world more as to the injustices.
So, but hang on, you're contradicting yourself a bit there, because you're saying people aren't better informed, but, well, actually they are, because they're all turning out on the streets.
People are better informed in the sense that they're making better informed judgments because they're using a wider range of sources. But what you've got going on if I use Talk TV as an example, in my honest opinion, is a one-sided, biased narrative.
But I think we're helping that because by having this conversation.
When you listen to the amount of guests that you're getting on the actual screen, you're not doing as many.
Were there any of those guests we didn't challenge though?
You're not challenging. You're just going with the narrative that they're blowing out.
But who did I not challenge, for example, on this show? I can't speak for other shows.
If anything, of all the people I've seen on Talk TV, it pains me to say Piers Morgan has probably been the only one that seems to have had a balanced view.
Okay, well, that's that. Is that? Do you mean balanced view? Someone who agrees with your point of view? Because I've asked you a question, and I'd like you to try and answer it.
It's not about agreeing with just one point of view. It's allowing pro-Palestinian voices as well as pro-Israel voices on.
But they've been on.
Perhaps even to have a balanced debate. But aside from the Piers Morgan sort of slot, Julia Hartley-Brewer, what's the other guy, Mike Graham, it's just all an Israeli narrative.
Well, hang on. Listen, I'm challenging that because you've said it several times, so I don't think you can... I don't want you to accuse me of shutting you down. I have had guests on this show, right, and they have all been challenged. I said to you, who have I not challenged? Even Benedict Spence. I said, here's the alternative view, Benedict. I'm asking people to support or not the call for a ceasefire. Now, that is not actually biased. If anything, I would say it's leaning to one side. What is it you don't like about it? Is it the answers that are coming in? Because I'm not going to control those answers. I'm reading out as many messages as I can. I'm taking as many calls as I can. And yes, it's weighted in Israel's favour. I agree with you, but that's only because that's what people are saying.
Nick.
Well, do you agree with that or not?
In Israel's favour, why is it that we've got hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets?
Yeah, but there's 60 million people in the country. I mean, it's a strong expression of opinion. I agree with you. All right? But 1 million people marched against Iraq. I don't think we've seen 1 million people on the streets here. I'm simply asking you a question. Do you agree with my assessment of what this show has done?
By some of the presenters, not all of them.
Well, I'm asking about this show because I honestly, believe it or not, I don't listen to every other show. Because you've been kind enough to listen.
How can anyone condone, in the modern world, a bunch of people, 2 to 4 million people living in an enclosure, a walled enclosure in Gaza, a walled enclosure in the West Bank?
Richie,
how can that be considered
listen, you're asking a question I haven't answered yet. You're asking a question in answer to my question to you. We're not going to get anywhere like that. And let me, just by the way, to give you encouragement, we're talking about Gaza being a place the size of Isle of Wight. It's probably had about, I think the last figure I saw, 7,000 people killed. We have covered that extensively. And I have made the case why it's legitimate humanitarian call from many, many people. And I've challenged those who've come on and said the military action must go on. And I've said, I've put the contra view. Now, I'm asking you, very simply, did you agree with my assessment of this show, that it is actually reflecting the opinions of people and no one has escaped unchallenged? And answer came there, none. OK, well, I think we'll leave it at that. Oh, yeah, you are going to answer. Great.
If I can see a good 50-50 balance of people being called in on the show...
OK, I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Both sides of viewpoints. That way, the British public can make an informed choice.
Listen, you are the proof that you can get other views. You are the very proof, Richie. Now, I've had guests on all sorts of subjects here, and I will continue to do that. And every guest that comes on will always be challenged one way or the other. So the other view does get voiced to a degree by me. But the real people we are letting speak here, the station that I believe encourages comment and free speech, is those who ring in with their views, as you have done, as others done. Abdul in Liverpool, I think, was one of them. There are others who have spoken in, and that's a good thing, and I won't stop that. So you didn't answer my question. I think what you're expecting us to do is have 2 guests on each subject every time. I'd actually much rather hear the opinions of our listeners who will give the contra view or support. And today, you're getting the answers you don't like. Tomorrow, you may, Richie, get the answers you do like. That's the nature of this programme. I think we've just got time to go to Barry in Norwich. Hello, Barry.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
And let me say thank you, Richie, for your call. I hope you appreciated it. Barry, I'm fine. I'm with you. What would you like to talk about?
I wanted to make a comment on the policing of marches.
Oh, yes,
London.
yes.
Now, me personally, I think the law should apply to everybody, regardless of race, colour, creed, whatever.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. You know, if I was to walk down the street waving the flag of St George, I'm sure I would be pulled up by the police and asked to put it away. You know, I listened to that Mark Rowley the other day, and he said he didn't believe he couldn't enforce taste or decency. Well, he does that when he's rotting around Twitter, arresting people for misgendering people on Twitter and stuff like that. If people are marching and insinuating violence, then march should be disbanded and they should be arrested. End of. It happens in other countries. There's a 2-tier police system in this country at the moment.
Someone else used that expression, and I hadn't heard it before. And and what you're basically talking about is double standards, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's not good because...
And I don't think it does anything for confidence in policing generally. I think that's my concern about that point as well.
My personal opinion is I think the police are scared of people marching in London.
Well, I think scared is a pejorative word, but not unreasonable. But what I would think is I think they are probably being told that actually you must not inflame a situation, and that gives them exactly that fear that they could just do that. Whereas if you go in France, as I think someone pointed out, they'll just go straight in.
That's Sarah Everard.
Yeah, exactly.
Protest. Yeah, I mean they weren't scared of going in there and manhandling them ladies, were they?
Yeah.
You know, and stuff like that. And that lady getting arrested for silently praying on a street. Yeah, suddenly becoming an assault police. I mean, you know, the law applies to everybody in this country. You know, not just certain people or whatever. The law is the law. Simple as that.
You make a very sound point, Barry, and unfortunately it is being inconsistently applied. The police, I think I put the police's point of view several times over. But Barry, thank you. Great call. Now, a few people sort of got different views on my conversation with Richie there. This is one from Barry in South Wales. TV is rubbish. Talk TV is rubbish. You don't read out texts that are sent in to be independent about Israel and Palestinian conflict. I don't know what you mean by independent. If you're saying neutral text, well, of course we do. So, honestly, Barry, that is rubbish. If you mean, which is what I think you mean, you don't read out texts in support of Palestine, you're wrong, Barry. I read them out if I see them, and we do get a lot, and I have read them out. So I think that's, honestly, Barry, I don't think that's fair or true. The fact is, though, I'm not getting as many in favour of Hamas as you might be implying here is necessary. You know, if I read one out about Hamas, I tell you, I would read it out, but I'd put a few caveats in along with it, because I think you cannot and should not be supporting a prescribed terror group. If you're sending me something about the people in Palestine and the fact they live in an area that is the size of the Isle of Wight, their conditions are horrific. Thousands are literally dying. And our question is, what price do we extract for this to stop? Well, I've said it repeatedly on this show. The problem is, I think you're only hearing what you want to hear in that one, Barry. So my apologies, but I disagree with you entirely. Elaine, what would you like to say?
Yeah. I want to talk about the proposed ceasefire.
Yes.
I think what would happen is if Israel were to lay down their arms, Hamas wouldn't say, "Oh, thank you very much, you're very kind." They'd say, "Oh, thank you very much, you're very weak." And then they would just go in and launch a pogrom, the likes of which hasn't been seen since the Holocaust. Because terrorists don't see kindness, they only see weakness.
I think you are expressing what many people believe, and certainly that is the argument of most Western leaders, I think is fair to say, that they would take advantage of a ceasefire and it only helps Hamas and it rewards Hamas. But I suppose the converse of that, Elaine, and that's what my job is here, is to say there are so many people, and I believe fundamentally innocent people, who are being effectively slaughtered and killed. What point do we say enough is enough? Or do we just carry on until Hamas is eradicated?
Well, it's a difficult one.
It is.
You know, there are always casualties of war. You know, millions of innocent Jews were killed during the Second World War.
Indeed.
There are always going to be innocent casualties, but it's in the hands of Hamas. You know, what does Israel want? Israel wants to live peacefully.
And its hostages back.
Well, Israel, before all of this happened, all that Israel wanted to do was to live peacefully. Israel's a country surrounded by enemies. All they wanted to do was live peacefully alongside the Palestinians. What did the Palestinians want? The Palestinians aren't terrorists. They just wanted to live a peaceful life.
Well, I'm glad you made that. I'm glad you made that distinction, Elaine. Sorry to cut over you there. I'm glad you made that distinction because actually, truthfully, not everyone sees it your way. Let's thank you, Elaine, for that call. Let's go to Oliver. Hello, Oliver in Middlesex.
Good afternoon, Nick. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, pleasure. You crack on. You fire away.
Right. I wanted to make a point that we are a multicultural and apparently integrated in various
some would say not integrated enough by any means. So, but crack on, yes.
Yeah, but some areas apparently are. But all it does is a small thing to kick off somewhere else in the world, and people show their true colours. Now, a lot of people have been born in this country and they're British. They may be Muslim, they may be Jews, but we're all raised with different beliefs, different values, different standards, and it's that raising that we don't know about what goes on behind closed doors that concerns me. Because
Oliver, can I ask you, do you think it expresses itself? Someone raised this point in a different way, and they said many of these people shouldn't be allowed to protest if they haven't lived in the area of the world where it happens. Is that kind of where you're going with your point?
Not really. I think they should be allowed to protest, but there has to be, and this is with free speech, there has to be a limit to where free speech becomes incitement to cause something.
To hatred. Like, it is, I mean, the law is clear, Oliver, that actually, if you are supporting Hamas, if you are shouting jihad, if you are calling for Jews to be eradicated, the law's very clear. The problem is people are not seeing the police enforce the law. Now, I've given the police's view, but is that what's troubling you?
Yes, because you'll see a right-wing protest, and there will be police everywhere. You see a Muslim protest, and there's very, very few police.
Well, relative to the numbers, I think someone's saying there's only 1,000, and some reports are saying it's true, there's 100,000 people. I'm still waiting for some numbers, see if anyone's published. You know, it's impossible to guess, but someone will make a claim. That isn't very many at all, and it does run risks. Listen, Oliver, thank you for your call. Very good to hear from so many of you. Do keep the calls coming. What does this ceasefire look like if you think there should be a ceasefire? Not many of you think there should be a ceasefire.